Hello everyone, Eve here from British Garden Centres and welcome back to another video in our new build garden series. I'm really excited about this video because it's part one of our creating a garden border. This video is going to be focusing on how to plan your garden border and where to start if you're thinking about creating a defined area of planting in your new outdoor space. A border is a defined area of planting in your garden. It can be used to edge around your garden, like this one behind me. They can be used to create boundaries or hug a wall and a fence. I absolutely love making garden borders because this is your chance to put together a creative, attractive display of different planting combinations to add colour, structure and year-round interest to your garden. And with a little planning, it's easy to start the process of planning a garden border. And the key to getting started is all about understanding your garden and its growing conditions. So let's get to it. The first step to planning your dream garden border is all about getting to know your soil. And you'll want to start by identifying what type of soil you have. It could be clay, sandy, chalky, silt, or it could even be the dream of every gardener, which is a lovely loamy soil. Now, if you're in a new build garden, the likelihood is that you'll have poor soil and it is normally clay, which is exactly what this garden has here. And you can tell this because you can grab some soil in your hands and squeeze it into a ball. There are some positives to having clay soil as it retains water and it can be quite fertile. However, it can be quite heavy to dig, it can get very boggy and it can take quite a while for the soil to warm up in the spring. So whatever type of soil you have, I recommend that you do some research around it so you know what the positives and negatives are. Now, I'd always recommend in any new build garden you improve your soil no matter what it's like. So for example, this garden here, a layer of topsoil has been added over the clay rubble that was left when it was built. And when we add in the garden border, we are going to dig in lots of farmyard manure, and when we're planting, we're going to add compost into that to improve the soil. It is also worth you knowing what pH level your soil is too. Now, we sell pH soil testing kits in our garden centres, so you can nip in your local British garden centre and grab one of those, because by testing the pH level, you can determine what sort of plants will like it in your garden. For example, plants like rhododendrons and azaleas absolutely love acidic soil. So if you've got that, you know what sort of plants you're going to choose. Aspect and light levels are really important features to know when you are planning a garden border, as it will depend what plants are going to thrive in your garden. The aspect of a garden is which direction it's facing. So this garden is a south-facing garden, so it gets full sun most of the time. So if you have a south or west-facing garden, you will receive a lot of sunlight and you will want to grow plants that like full sun. On the other hand, if you have east or north-facing gardens, you will get a lot of shade, so you will want to plant shade-loving plants. It is also worth noting that no matter what direction your garden faces, there may also be obstacles that affect the amount of light levels. So if you have any trees or buildings surrounding your garden, this will affect the amount of shade that your garden receives. So make sure to take note of this, and also notice how the light differs in your garden across all of the seasons. Another key step in planning your garden border is thinking about the climate and exposure that your garden receives. So make sure to take a note of the local climate in your area. Are you in a frost pocket? Because this will mean you will want to plant plants that are really hardy and will withstand cold conditions. You can do this by looking up the UK frost map online. Also, how exposed is your garden? Do you have really harsh drying winds? So for example, in this garden, it has a lovely climate, it's not in a frost pocket, and it also has a wall surrounding it, so it's nice and sheltered. It's now time to think about what your border is going to look like in terms of shape and size. So you will want to roughly measure out your border. Now, you can either start this by doing drawings on a bit of paper, or you can actually get out into your garden and measure your border out with a rope or a garden hose. Garden borders could be short, narrow strips of areas of planting, or you can have a wide, deep, curved border. It's really useful to mark out and roughly measure your garden border, because this will help you understand the rough amount of plants you will need and any topsoil or compost that you are adding. If you want to calculate the area of your border, it's really simple. You just need to measure the length and width of the border to create the area. It's time to get fun and creative, because you now need to decide what sort of style you want your border to be. Some styles, of course, are suited to growing conditions. So if you like the idea of a Mediterranean garden, your garden would ideally be somewhere that gets lots of sun and has free draining soil. However, you can be flexible with this by improving your soil and altering growing conditions slightly. For example, adding fences or structures to block any harsh drying winds. Choosing a garden style is obviously down to personal taste too. And styles for you to consider are cottage gardens, formal planting, contemporary planting, maybe you'd like a wildlife garden or more of a rockery, or even something like a Japanese style garden. If you're struggling to choose a style, then there is inspiration everywhere. You can look on social media, in gardening books, on TV, or even by visiting local open gardens. This new build garden really wanted a border with cottage style planting, so that's exactly what we've gone for. It's time for one of my favourite stages of the planning process, and that is to select your garden border plants. There are a couple of factors to consider when doing this. You need to think about your growing conditions. This is a south facing border, so I have looked for plants that really like full sun. You will need to look for plants that fit the style of garden that you'd like. So this is a cottage style border, so I have gone for plants like fluffy grasses, lupins, astilbes. Colour also comes into play here. You could have a whole host of colours in your garden border, or you may just want to pick out a couple of contrasting or complementing colours to stick with for your planting. This new build project wanted a purple and white planting scheme, so that's exactly what we've gone for. It's also worth thinking about seasonal interest. So once you have a list of plants that you're considering, I would write the flowering season next to each plant, and then you can make sure that you've got something in flower at all times of the year. Within your plant list, you will want a mix of trees, shrubs, perennials, annuals, and bulbs. And don't forget to vary sizes, forms, textures of foliage and flowers to get the best effect. Also, depending on how much time you have to put in your garden, it's worth checking the maintenance that those plants that you've chosen will need. And don't forget to check the ultimate height and spread of plants, as you don't want a specific plant taking over your border. If you're really struggling with choosing border plants and have never done anything like this before, then there's lots of research and books out there for you to look at. Also, please nip into your local British Garden Centre and ask the staff there to help you, as they will be more than willing to give you help and advice. Once you have a list of potential plants to add into your border, then I would suggest that you do a rough sketch to position them, so that you know you've got enough and you have a rough idea of what it's going to look like when you come to plant your border. You really don't have to be a garden designer to do this. It doesn't have to be to scale. You can just do a rough sketch. And that is exactly what I did for this garden. I did a really rough, not to scale sketch, and I added in the trees or anything with structural or evergreen interest first to create the bones and framework of the garden. I then moved on to adding in my perennials, and I added these in groups of odd numbers to add a sense of fullness, and I have repeated those groups across the whole border to create a sense of flow and to also unify the whole planting scheme. And if you're adding any plants of interest, for example, they're scented or have scented leaves, then make sure you add them in somewhere where you're going to be able to smell them. So for example, I am adding a climbing scented David Austin rose in this garden, right on the edge of the border, because it's nearer to the pergola with the dining set under it. And finally, last but not least, probably the most exciting step is to head out to your local British Garden Centre and source and buy the plants that you need for your garden border. If you're struggling or need any help and advice, please ask a staff member because they are there and happy to help. So if you're going to create a garden border of your own, I hope these steps help you into planning your dream border. Make sure to stay tuned for part 2 of this video where we will be actually breaking ground and creating a garden border for this lovely new build garden. If you'd like to shop any of the products seen in this video, you can nip to your local British Garden Centre, or you can shop online using our website. And if you'd like to see more content like this, please follow our social media channels and make sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel for more videos. Thank you for watching, everyone. See you next time.